What they admitted to is worse than the rumor. This medical practice predates modern antibiotics by thousands of years. Skeletal remains from ancient Nubia, dating back nearly 2,000 years, have shown traces of tetracycline, a modern antibiotic compound, embedded in the bone. Researchers believe this came from beer brewed using grain naturally contaminated with tetracycline-producing bacteria, which explains why this took so long to come out. Save this before it's gone. They buried this for decades, and the ending is why. This timeline fact breaks most people's sense of history. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built around 2560 BC. Cleopatra was born in 69 BC, roughly 2,500 years after the pyramid was completed. That means Cleopatra was born closer in time to the invention of the iPhone in 2007 than to the construction of the pyramids. Rewatch the first 3 seconds. You'll catch it. This was dismissed as a theory until it wasn't. History's most famous quote might be entirely fabricated. There is no verified historical evidence that Marie Antoinette ever said, "Let them eat cake," in response to hearing peasants had no bread. The phrase actually appears in Jean-Jacques Rousseau's writings years before she even arrived in France as queen, attributed to an unnamed great princess. Save this before it's gone. This was dismissed as a theory until it wasn't. Preserved ash revealed something surprisingly human. When archaeologists excavated Pompeii, buried by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, they found thousands of pieces of graffiti preserved on the walls, ranging from political campaign slogans to insults, jokes, and love poems written by ordinary citizens. Save this before it's gone. Why did they hide this from the public? This reign may be the longest in recorded human history. Pepi II, a pharaoh of Egypt's 6th dynasty, is traditionally recorded by ancient historian Manetho as ruling for about 94 years, beginning as a young child around age 6. If accurate, this would make his reign one of the longest documented in human history. And that's the part they never wanted made public. Rewatch the first 3 seconds. You'll catch it. What actually happened is stranger than what they told us. The military was deployed against an animal, and it did not go well. In 1932, the Australian military launched an operation against emus in Western Australia after the birds destroyed farmland during a drought. Soldiers were sent with machine guns to cull the population, which had grown to roughly 20,000 birds. Save this before it's gone. What actually happened is stranger than what they told us. His most famous theory wasn't even what the prize was for. Albert Einstein won the 1921 Nobel Prize in Physics, but not for his theory of relativity. The Nobel Committee at the time considered relativity too controversial and unproven to award, so instead they honored his 1905 work explaining the photoelectric effect. Follow for daily conspiracy theories. They buried this for decades, and the ending is why. The crew knew danger was ahead well before the collision. On the night of April 14, 1912, the Titanic's radio operators received at least 6 separate ice warnings from nearby ships throughout the evening, including one from the SS Californian just an hour before the collision. Save this before it's gone. They buried this for decades, and the ending is why. This war started and ended before most meetings do. The Anglo-Zanzibar War of 1896 between the United Kingdom and the Zanzibar Sultanate lasted approximately 38 to 45 minutes, making it the shortest recorded war in history. It began after the Sultan died and his successor took power without British approval. And that's the part they never wanted made public. Watch the first line again. It explains everything. Nobody believed this until the documents leaked. History's longest reigns go back further than most people think. Before Queen Elizabeth II's 70-year reign, King Louis XIV of France held the record for the longest verified reign of a major monarch, ruling for 72 years from 1643 to 1715, having become king at just 4 years old following his father's death. Follow for daily conspiracy theories. What they admitted to is worse than the rumor. For decades, the news you trusted may have been quietly shaped by intelligence agencies. Why would an intelligence agency want secret relationships with hundreds of journalists? For years, the very idea sounded like paranoid fantasy. Surely the free press was independent, and the stories people read each morning were the product of honest reporting. Save this before it's gone. This was dismissed as a theory until it wasn't. A secret network helped some of the worst Nazi war criminals flee to South America with help from inside the Vatican. When World War II ended in 1945, the Nuremberg trials prosecuted 24 of the top Nazi leaders. But thousands of others, SS officers, concentration camp commanders, scientists who ran human experiments, simply disappeared. They used a network later called the Ratlins, escape routes from Europe to South America that passed through monasteries, safe houses, and consulates. Share this before it's gone. Follow for daily theories. This was dismissed as a theory until it wasn't. Declassified records revealed citizens were exposed without ever being told. Why would a government release substances over its own cities to see what would happen? During the Cold War, military and government agencies conducted a series of tests to study how particles might spread through the air over populated areas, information they considered vital for understanding the threat of biological or chemical attack. Share this before it's gone. Follow for daily theories. Why did they hide this from the public? Internal documents prove they knew the truth in 1953 and spent billions covering it up. In 1953, a research director at Brown and Williamson Tobacco wrote an internal memo. It said, in plain language, "We are in the business of selling nicotine, an addictive drug." The memo was marked confidential. Share this before it's gone. Follow for daily theories. This was called a conspiracy theory. Then it was declassified. The company knew and protected only themselves. Why were hundreds of young women instructed to put deadly poison in their mouths every single day at their jobs, while their employer knew exactly how dangerous it was? In the early 20th century, a glowing paint made with radium became popular for painting watch dials that could be seen in the dark. Share this before it's gone. Follow for daily theories. Why did they hide this from the public? The rockets that sent Americans to the moon were built by former Nazi engineers the U.S. smuggled in. When World War II ended, American intelligence launched a classified program called Operation Paperclip. Its mission was to recruit German scientists, engineers, and technical experts, including those with Nazi party memberships or direct involvement in war crimes, and bring them to the United States before the Soviet Union could capture them. Over 1,600 German specialists were brought to America under the program. Share this before it's gone. Follow for daily theories. This was called a conspiracy theory. Then it was declassified. A nearly century-old secret meeting set the pattern we still live with. Why does it so often feel like your devices fail just after the warranty expires, forcing you to buy a new one? It turns out this suspicion has real historical roots. Nearly a century ago, manufacturers of a common everyday product realized that if their goods lasted too long, people would rarely need to buy replacements, which was bad for business. Share this before it's gone. Follow for daily theories. Why did they hide this from the public? A company knew its product was killing its workers and kept them painting anyway. In the early 20th century, a new glowing paint made with radium became wildly popular for painting watch dials and instrument faces that needed to be visible in the dark. Factories hired young women to do the delicate painting work. To keep their brushes precise, the women were instructed to shape the bristles with their lips, a technique called lip pointing. Share this before it's gone. Follow for daily theories. Why did they hide this from the public? They could not truly say no, and for years no one had to ask. Why would researchers conduct experiments on prisoners who were in no real position to refuse? For much of the 20th century, incarcerated people were used as test subjects for a wide range of medical and chemical experiments. They were exposed to substances, infections, and procedures, sometimes in exchange for small payments or promises that carried enormous weight inside a prison. Share this before it's gone. Follow for daily theories. This was called a conspiracy theory. Then it was declassified. Two reporters brought down the most powerful man in the world, guided by a source nobody could identify for 30 years. It began with what seemed like a minor crime, a break-in at an office complex in Washington. 5 men were caught attempting to wiretap and photograph documents at the headquarters of a political party. It could have been dismissed as a small burglary, but 2 young newspaper reporters began pulling at the threads, and a mysterious inside source guided them through the investigation. Share this before it's gone. Follow for daily theories.